And we're calling the meeting to order at approximately 8:30. And I'd like us please to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Thank you very much. And would also like to indicate that proper notice has been given as required by the Ohio Revised Code 121.22. So we're going to adhere and follow the agenda. And first on our agenda is approval of our board meeting minutes from August the 17th, 2020. Everyone should have received a copy. Is there any additions or changes to the board meeting minutes as sent?
I'll make a motion to approve the board meeting minutes from the August 17th board meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
All right.
Anyone abstaining? Anyone voting against? Those meetings are approved. Next is the appointment of precinct election officials, and I'm going to turn that over to you, Ms. Paula.
Sure, yes. So each year, the board is required to appoint the precinct election officials by September 15th. You have in your packet a booklet of those precinct election officials that staff has hired so far. We're about 87% to our goal, our requirement number of poll workers, so that's good. But we're still actively recruiting. So we request that the board appoint the poll workers listed in the packet for working this year, and then also allow staff to fill vacancies as needed.
So two separate motions, you think, or just one to approve? And
I think it's usually just one to approve.
One to approve.
that's fine. I will move approval and appointment of the precinct election officials that are in our contact list directory that was delivered to the board here today on September the 9th. Today? 8th.
8th.
Thank you.
I will second that motion.
Okay, any more discussions? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? That motion carries. And I would just like to add that I heard officially with a notice that was sent to me, a copy of it, to all the P&G executives and staff, that encouraging them to participate in this process for democracy as well. So we have on board, we had first Western and Southern, and we have other systems and entities and organizations that are participating as well. So I just want to share with that, so for the record, they are on board as well. Next, we have an update on the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election planning. Ms. Paula?
Yes, to give an update, as mentioned, we are actively recruiting poll workers. Luckily, the numbers go up each time we meet, that we can report on the number that have applied. Our online training begins September 18th, correct, Sally? And then our in-person Train the Trainer begins on September 28th with our first in-person training on October 1st. If you recall, experienced poll workers will be taking online training if they have access to the internet, and then new poll workers must attend in-person training. As far as our absentee by mail, we've received over 77,000 absentee applications. The Secretary of State application started hitting mailboxes last week, so we expect to see a spike in that number of applications coming in this week and next week. We've already brought in temporary staff and had additional temporary staff lined up, and some of those are starting today. The remainder will be starting tomorrow. We also have our phone bank set up to answer any calls that come in for voters regarding absentee voting. UCAVA voters, so those would be the civilians living overseas, and military voters will begin receiving their ballots on September 18th. And everyone else, those ballots will go in the mail October 6th. And we are keeping up to date with the processing. For example, staff is processing today what came in the mail on Friday. So we are keeping up and then pushing that information to our website to update that each morning so voters can track the status of that. And then two of our board members, Gwen and Alex, just toured our early vote center for the additional space that we're renting for this election. It more than doubled the size of our early vote center. You have in your packet a diagram of that layout and how it will work. It's not quite finalized. We're still working out the details of where the campaign area will be, and we're waiting for some additional information from our landlord. We'll let you know, the board know, as soon as we receive that, and then the plan is to then distribute this document to all the campaigns, so they'll understand how the process will work. And we will have a number of sheriff's officers and or Norwood police officers. We're working with both to help control the flow of traffic during the entire early voting period.
Just a quick question, just looking at this diagram. It appears to me, anyway, that potentially we could have some issues with parking. It's a relatively limited area here indicated that's available for voter parking.
It's about 75 parking spaces. And then we also have the parking garage across the street that's free parking.
So that'll be an overflow for what we observed this morning. There appears to be an opportunity perhaps to broaden that depending on the other building occupants, if they're still working at home. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The other question that I have, and both you and Sally, if you can answer, are both of you guys going to be participating in any of the training at all? Like, you know, introducing yourself and showing a sense of solidarity and
We do that with the trainers. When they start, we introduce ourselves as well as staff. We do have a message from the two of us that starts out the online training
Okay.
when they first log on.
Okay. My other question regarding temporary staff, from a safety and security perspective, are they processed through as our normal staff would be, as far as making sure that they, that everything is secure, that their background checks are good, excellent, so that we don't have to worry about any problems?
That's correct. We're following the board's policy, and all of our temporary staff have local and state background checks performed before they begin work.
Okay, so we don't do national checks, though?
No.
But if it was deemed a concern, we would do a national check, a federal check?
If we needed to,
Okay.
I think we could arrange that. We'd have to work with the sheriff's office.
Okay, I would just wondering, and would perhaps encourage if there's some sense that perhaps you have a gut feeling something's not right, that we can do a federal check as well.
Yes, we can look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question about the poll workers. Just looking through this book, seems to be kind of a wide variety of the number of poll workers assigned to precincts. And it's just a matter of curiosity. Generally speaking, in the past, what we've had was 5 poll workers per precinct. Is that not accurate?
No, it's 4.
4?
4 poll workers per precinct. We, for 6, again, to keep that partisan balance. And for this election, we are recruiting 6 poll workers per precinct for what we call single polling locations. So that's a polling location that only has 1 precinct. So 6 for those, and then for multiples, it's 4 per precinct. So if there's 2 precincts housed in the location, the goal is to have 8 poll workers and so on, with the highest amount being our quads, where we have 4 precincts, and those have 16 poll workers.
And then we have a voting location manager for each location, is that?
The manager is included in that number, correct.
And I just thought of something as well. How have we notified those voters whose precincts have changed?
For this election, we're going to send a postcard to every registered voter, letting them know their polling location, which is what the board historically does in presidential years.
Okay.
And this year, we even sort of changed the information on that. In addition to telling the voter what their precinct and polling location is and the hours the polls will be open on election day, we also gave just a brief description of the safety measures that will be conducted at their polling place on election day. So they understand that, we will be sanitizing high-touch areas, the masks, gloves, et cetera. So we're providing that information to them. And we have planned, I believe, Chuck, that's to go out the first week of October? Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
The postcard will go out
Yes.
first week? Okay.
yes.
So if it goes out the first week in October, they will probably get it the third week in October.
Definitely in time for the election day. That's our plan.
Not the next 2 or 3, 4 days, but at least a week, week and a half after that.
Yes.
Okay, and is it on our website? Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, all the polling locations have been locked down, and there's lists posted to our website, and voters can put their name and address in and look up their own particular polling location.
When will the copies of their sample ballots be confirmed so that they can go online and look at that?
September 18th.
Okay, thank you.
Sally, do you have anything more on the update on November election?
Thank you both for the work that you're doing and all the other key staff, and because everybody's a key staff in this game, we're all together on it. So thank you all for what you're doing to coordinate this and with the planning and making sure that you look at every little infinite detail logistically to make it easier for our voters to access this area. Anything else regarding
Anything
planning?
else? Thank you.
Okay. Kayla, you have anything?
Not regarding precinct elected officials.
Okay. Next on the agenda is personnel policy.
Yes, you have a request in your packet. Due to the extended primary and conducting a presidential election during a pandemic, we have extremely limited the amount of time that staff was able to take vacation this year. In fact, no vacation pretty much from the first of the year until about mid-May. And then again, there's no vacation time being taken now through at least Thanksgiving, and then we'll have to see how the election goes after that. So we're asking the board to grant an exception for individuals who are reaching their maximum amount of vacation accrual instead of losing it, if they would be given a 6-month extension so that they don't lose their vacation because they were prohibited from taking it this year.
Yeah, this is a no-brainer from where I sit to support this. While the rest of the universe kind of went on lockdown, this place never did. We kept working, our people here kept working even through the pandemic and its height, and continue to do so. So I fully support giving our very dedicated and hardworking staff this additional time, this additional period to use their vacation time, so.
And I wholeheartedly agree, because I know for a fact that they are working overtime, evenings, weekends, forget about a vacation, what's that word, So with dedicated staff like we have, we owe that to them so that they can feel comfortable and confident that they're not going to lose their time.
Do we need a motion on that?
Yes.
Oh,
I'll go ahead and move then that we adopt this change to our policy and allow a 6-month extension to any BOE employee who will lose their vacation time in 2020 due to accrual limits.
I'll second that motion.
okay, any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? As I frequently say, the only person that would abstain would be the devil, and he's not here. So, thank you.
Are you talking about Chip? Hold on.
Thank you. You guys just keep doing the great job that you're doing. And any other business?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
actually, there was one other item that I wanted to raise for discussion, having to do with election planning. We've had a lot of discussion here about additional drop boxes. I know we've gotten instruction from the Secretary of State that we're not permitted to do that. I also know that there's a court case proceeding at the moment on that, also same subject. But aside from that, I wanted to raise the question as to whether or not it might be feasible to do something like this, that we have a van staffed by both a Republican and a Democrat that goes to various locations around the county on a pre-announced schedule. Maybe more so towards the end of this process, that would allow people to drop off ballots at that van, basically putting them in the hands of the director, so to speak, so that that would provide an alternative to getting ballots back to the Board of Elections without having to come here to the drop box, and also without having to rely on the post office, which clearly there is some uncertainty about at this point. And people are going to be nervous about that, particularly, I think, in the last 2 weeks. So I'm wondering about the feasibility of just having that one van that goes to a variety of locations around the county on a pre-announced schedule, so that people know that they can go, to Anderson Township Government Center, for example, from 2 to 4 on a particular day, and we could arrange that schedule as would be appropriate. Is that something that would be feasible to do?
You mean like a drop box on wheels? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know if I'd call it a drop box on wheels, but it's a method of getting ballots back to the board without requiring people to drive here to Norwood, and also without requiring them to rely on the post office, which I think a lot of people are concerned about.
So the box that's in the automobile or the van would be a box that would be safely locked in such a manner, they just drop the ballot in the,
Well, we
or
pardon?
logistically, they could figure that out. You want them to research that, is that?
however they put them in the van is a matter we'd have to make a decision about. But my point is simply that if that van were parked at a government facility somewhere in Hamilton County with Board of Elections staff folks, if somebody brought a ballot to that location, they would have returned it to the Board of Elections.
Interesting. Well, I think it's worth researching.
I don't
From
know
a
if
fairness
legally that's
perspective.
something we're permitted to do.
Pardon?
I don't know if legally that's something we're permitted to do.
Well, I don't know of anything that would prohibit us from doing it. Do you?
It seems to me, look, I'm going to just speak out in opposition now, so it's clear where I am on something like this. We're so close to the election. We're working so hard to get this right. There's so many opportunities to vote. You've got drop boxes. They're blue post office boxes all across Hamilton County. There's all this hysteria around voting. We make it so incredibly easy to vote. We all just toured, a facility that's going to make it twice as easy for people to vote here. To add this additional burden to staff and to do what is essentially, and I agree with, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, Madam Chair, but it's a rolling drop box. It's a way to get around what has already been clearly enunciated by the Secretary of State. So I'm opposed, and I don't want to see our staff chase this down in the final 60 days if the board's not on it. Now, again, we're missing a third or fourth board member. I don't want to speak for him, but all I would ask is if this is something you guys are serious about pursuing, that we get our full board members, all of our board members present, so we can actually take a vote on whether to direct staff to do it. That's my position about
Well,
it. And we've
Alex-
had, I'm sorry, Caleb, and I'll yield the floor in a second. But we've always had an agreement here that if a fellow board member is missing on something that divides the board, which isn't often, by the way, we're almost always united on these kind of things, or most things, but that we usually table those things. So I would just ask that perhaps if you want to pursue this, Caleb, that we just table it until Mr. Gerhardt's here, and if we ultimately have to take a vote as to how to direct staff, we can do it when we have the full cadre of board members.
Well, just to be clear, Alex, I was not intending to make a motion here.
I didn't think so, and I appreciate that.
And to push a vote when Chip's not here, that was not my intent.
No, I didn't think so. I didn't think so.
I just wanted to raise the question as to whether or not this is something that is feasible to do. And at least from what I can see, that I don't see any reason that we could not do it. And you know, there is a lot of concern about the post office. The post office has basically told secretaries of state that there is some question about their capacity to get ballots back in time. So I guess we're going to have to see how things go, but I just want to float that idea as a possible way of dealing with the circumstances that may arise.
I think it's a great question to raise. I think as long as this universe continues to receive fake news about the voting process, and also even questioning what we do as a board of election and what the post office does, I'm very comfortable with what we do here in Hamilton County. I believe that we have the most organized, secure operation and throughout than any other board of election in this state. And but I feel where the voters are coming from because of the hysteria that just is what you've described, board member Alex. And as long as that hysteria and those fake news are out there, it's going to create more problems for us trying to do what's right, fair, open, and transparent. So I concur. Usually we make these decisions, and since you're not making a vote because we don't have our full board, I think it's good to raise the question to show that we're open, broad-minded, open-minded, and thinking from a common sense perspective. I hadn't thought about that. I was not aware that you were going to bring this up, and I'm glad you have. And I think it's something that we continue to look at. So, but not make any decisions because we don't have our full board here.
Appreciate that.
And I just, I think we're not the ones spreading all these vicious lies. There are other people that are doing it, and we have to stay strong, firm, and open-minded. So I think it's something we can look at a later date when our full board capacity is here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for thinking outside of the box as well. Any other discussion?
Madam Chair, there's been at least, it's come to me that members of the public wish to have public comment today, so I just was asked to remind you of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. This is an opportunity, and I should remember that because in all the board meetings that I've facilitated, we always have an open time for the public to ask any questions that they may have. And so this is the right time, right place, and right opportunity. Sir, if you will approach the podium and share with us your name, your address, and the purpose, we'd appreciate it.
All right, thank you. My name is Jay Janis Jr. Address is 4462 Daffodil Avenue, Sycamore Township, Ohio. Thank you for allowing me to speak and the public to speak. Some of my comments are in relation to what was spoken by you today. In the 2020 Ohio primary election, that was my first time I ever voted absentee. And I want to, just as a citizen, a voter, I wanted to share with you some of my experiences. I filled out the absentee ballot application, and I mailed it in. And normally in the past, your office and staff would promptly respond with the application back in the mail. And I'm off the top of my head, several days went by, and I received nothing in the mail. So I called up here, and this is during, obviously, when the pandemic was kind of at its height in our area. And I tried switchboard, and I guess everyone was either working from home or was limited staff that day. By happenstance, I happened to have a couple of the business cards for some of the staff. I contacted the director, and she was not on her phone. I contacted the deputy director, and she answered. And I identified myself, voiced my concern. And I said, oh, are you getting something to the effect, oh, are you getting a high number of absentee ballot applications? And she basically said yes, with a great emphasis. So eventually I received the absentee ballot application. I filled it out, and with the Postal Service issues in mind then, I drove it down and put it in the outside box here. Several days went by, and I still didn't receive the ballot. When I received the ballot, I filled it out and mailed it back to saying, or correction, let me back up here. When your staff mailed me the ballot to my residence, and I live in what some call South Central Sycamore Township, it was 4 days. 4 days from here to there. And that just floored me. That really frightened me with that amount of time with something important as a ballot. I'm not talking about security issues. I'm just talking about straight mailing issues. So I believe roughly in Ohio, when you're allowed to mail out the ballots, are roughly the first week in October. Based on some of my experiences, I think maybe some of you that have influence with the Ohio General Assembly, maybe they should move that up and start mailing out the ballot applications around Labor Day, around this time. I'd like to share with you some other post office mailing dates and experiences I've had. These are all first-class mail in my personal experience. Businessmen in Springdale, Ohio mailed something to me, first class to my residence, 7 days. I mailed something first class from my residence to a resident in the northern part of Sycamore Township. That was 19 days. I don't think there's any others. And I think that's terrible. So even though I think I've shared with some of you in the past, as long as I can walk, waddle, stand upright, and breathe, I did enjoy going to the voting in person, even though you offer the many options to vote early. I do enjoy going to the poll in person on Election Day. But seeing how in the primary, that date was changed a couple times, this time I may try coming here and try to vote in person, whatever it is, the 30 days or so before. And but I think the issue with the mail is a big concern. One of your prior meetings, I think your legal counsel and some of the staff mentioned, and I think the word was smudges, where from no fault of our own, when we mail in the ballots, the envelopes, the applications, if the postmark is smudged, apparently then our vote is not counted. We, the voter, and I believe all of you here, have no control over a smudge from the Postal Service, but I think that is a concern. I think, just as an individual, I think Mr. Fox's ideas a couple times about having some, I guess my word, secure locations where bipartisan teams, to quote some of you, could go out and whatever the term may be, mobile van, other locations. I think that would merit further investigation. So I have one or two other questions, if I may.
Absolutely.
When the application is mailed in or brought in for the absentee ballot, does the staff here check just to see if that person is registered, or do they check to verify and match the signature?
Sally or Sherry?
When we get the application, we look up the voter record, make sure all the identifying information is correct and that the signature is correct before we process it.
And is that done by, I'm just curious, an automated machine, or does a human being do it
Oh,
individually?
it's all human beings.
Okay, and same with the regular, when the ballot actually comes in, same process?
Yes. I mean, the image runs through a machine, but they go to staff members' desks, and they're all verified by a person.
Okay, and do you believe with the reported, I guess, higher than normal absentee ballot requests received by your office so far, comparable to the last presidential election, you'll have adequate staff, in this case, to individually verify each application and signature and so forth?
Yes, sir. Mhm.
Okay, thank you for your time. That's all my
Thank you,
questions.
Mr. Gaddis.
Thank you so much. That was, those are good questions. And, and it also reflects basically your observations when you've been here, when we've had mail that's come in and after the election that we've had to review, evaluate, and assess. And it's a concern for all of us, and it's a real concern, and it's not just a concern from Hamilton County, because the mail service, postal service has been having problems recently, and we know this. And the fact that the rapid sorting machines have been deleted, not only throughout the United States, but here in Hamilton County as well. And there doesn't appear to be any intention to put them back in order just to get us through the November election. That's a fact. And I feel your concerns, and I hear concerns from a lot of residents as I am out and about, just I'm sure as Alex does as well. So, I guess I'd like to raise a question. If a person mailed their ballot and it's postmarked the day before November the 3rd, and it doesn't get to us at the time that we've established that it has to get to us, will that ballot be disqualified because it wasn't the voters? I'm the voter, it wasn't my fault. I put it in, but it took 2 to 3 weeks to get here.
It does, ballots do have to be postmarked for this election on or before November 2nd and received by November 13th, on or before November 13th, in order to be counted. I will note the smudge, if a postmark's smudged, as long as it's received on or before Election Day, it doesn't matter if the postmark is smudged, if there is no postmark, if it's illegible, it's counted. So the postmark only comes into play when the ballots are received after Election Day. That's when you have to look at a postmark to ensure that the voter didn't vote the ballot after Election Day. So I did want to note that. So the key is to just get it returned as soon as possible. As soon as the voter receives the ballot, vote it, and either put it in the mail or bring it here as soon as possible.
And that's the message we should be sending out, and we are.
Yes.
Once you get that ballot, complete it and send it in immediately.
Yes.
But there's always going to be a few. So let's say all of us mailed our ballot in this room on November the 2nd, and it didn't get here till November the 14th or 15th.
That those ballots would not be counted. Under Ohio law, they have to be received by the board within 10 days after.
In spite of what we all know that's happening with the postal services at this point.
That's correct. To my knowledge, there's been no change in Ohio law regarding that.
I'd like to reiterate what I said before. If we get to the point, November 13th, or rather, 4 or 5 days later, and we're getting a very large number of ballots arriving that were properly postmarked but not delivered by the 13th, I guarantee you there's going to be a court case, and it'll be a statewide issue. I really think the legislature needs to step to the plate and make some attempt to deal with this ahead of time, because there's a real danger of chaos as a result of that.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
for
you.
letting me
Just to
speak.
give it some equal time, there does need to be some finality, however, to the elections process. And if you're watching publicly and you're asking yourself about it, I mean, we do have to finish the election and get the ballots counted and move on and govern. So But I do agree with you, Caleb, that there will hopefully not, but likely be litigation by whoever doesn't prevail if in fact there are still ballots coming in. I think the public needs to be reassured, though, that we will conduct this election safely, securely. I think today alone we've reviewed new space. We've approved the hiring of almost 3,000 or close to it.
About
Poll
2,400.
workers. So you'll be able to vote, and you'll have a month to do it, and you can mail your ballot in. If you mail it in early, that's even better. You can track your ballot online, right, Sherry, and see that your absentee ballot made it here, and you can find out even after that your ballot was received, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
voters have a lot of tools at their disposal to be sure that this election, that their vote is counted this election. And I feel very confident. This is my 13th election cycle that I've been here, and I'm very confident in our team and our staff that we'll be able to count your ballots.
I think it's important to remind our voters, as we have, when I'm on the radio speaking, to, once you get your ballot, to complete it. Don't let it sit on your kitchen or dining room table, and get it in right away. But I'm always playing the devil's advocate. So, because that's sort of my thing, Sherry and Sally, could you guys walk through the process again when a person wants an application? From the time they want the application, what happens when it leaves here? What happens when it returns here? Just for those who may not be clearly aware of that process. So could you guys walk through that one more time?
Sure. Well, every registered voter in Hamilton County should have by now received an application from the Secretary of State. So an application for a vote-by-mail ballot was mailed to every registered voter, and they started hitting mailboxes last week. When the voter sends that to the Board of Elections, either in person by dropping it off in our drop box or through the mail, it is removed from the envelope. It's reviewed to make sure the required information is contained on the application. That's the voter's name, address, date of birth, a form of ID, and their signature. That information also has to match what's on file with the voter registration system. If any of that information is missing or non-matching, a notice is sent, not a ballot, but a notice is sent to the voter, letting them cure that mistake. And we're sending notice in written form, and we're also calling voters if they provided a phone number. Once the information on the application is complete and matches our record, then beginning October 6th, ballots will be mailed to the voters. We expect to be mailing voters ballots on October 6th for all voters whose applications we received through the Friday or Saturday before. Once they vote their ballots, they return it inside an identification envelope, and then the identification envelope is placed in an outer envelope. There's no way for the post office to know, because I know this has been a little bit of a rumor on social media, who the voter's party affiliation when they're voting. That information is not contained on the outer envelope. It's not contained on the identification envelope in general elections. So there's no way for the post office to know the voter's party affiliation as it travels back to the board. Voters obviously also can use our drop box to return it. When the ballot's returned, then the bipartisan teams remove the identification envelope from the outer envelope. And again, the identification envelope is reviewed in the same manner as the application was. If all that information matches, then the ballot is removed from the envelope and it is scanned into our vote counting system, but not tabulated. If any of the information is missing or non-matching, then a notice, again, is sent to the voter, allowing the voter to cure that defect. And the voter has until 7 days after Election Day to cure the defect by supplying the information. And then at 7:31 p.m., when the polls close on Election Day, we basically hit the tabulate button and then push that data out to the world through our website.
Very good.
Quick question.
Well done.
Obviously, the Secretary of State's mailing only went to registered voters. Did that only go to active voters or all registered voters?
My understanding, it went to all registered voters, and that was sort of the first wave. Now there's voters who, because the close of registration isn't until October 5th, we obviously are having people registering since that date. So I believe there's going to be 2 more rounds. Is that correct? Yeah. So to capture those individuals who registered after the first mailing.
If somebody, there are a variety of other ways to get an absentee application and send it in. If somebody sends an absentee application, but when we check their registration, they're not registered, do we notify them of that and allow
Yes.
them to correct it?
Yes, we do. We notify them that they're not registered, and we send a registration form to them, and then the letter, I believe, also has the link where they can register online, I believe. But yeah, we definitely send them a registration form along with a notice.
I just would also like to remind our audience and our voters that if you receive a mail-in application request and the envelope is there pre-stamped and it goes back to Columbus, because some voters here in our county have received this. And I saw it myself. So I say, if it says go back, send it back to Columbus, don't do it. Send it here take it down to our Dropbox, call Sally, call Sherry, make them aware of this and follow their directions from there. Because there are some filtering into our county just like that, because I saw one myself. And so it was my brother was one, and I had him fill out my application form, and I dropped it down here myself because I don't understand. So if it goes back to Columbus, that means there's more days going to be lost, and you don't know when it's ever going to get back down here to us. So I just think it pays to think and stay smart about this whole process, and I agree with what everyone is saying. You know, but this election is different than any we've ever had, and we have to admit that. We've got a pandemic, and we have a lot of other issues going on. So my final word as we close the meeting is basically, we're doing everything to make your vote count. Vote, 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 because your vote is your voice. And that ends my comments for today's meeting.
I had one other quick question. I know that we have been instructed to revise the envelopes for absentee ballots. Has that process been completed? And I'm just curious, what changes were we asked to make?
Yes, we were asked to revise the envelopes. The biggest changes on the outgoing mail to the voter is there's a very large blue stripe that appears on the envelope, so it makes it more identifiable to the post office and to voters that these are ballots that are moving through the mail. In addition to the election logo that's always appeared, it also has the county seal, some information for the voter, and then on the back ends, the return envelopes. So when the voter returns their voted ballot, it has a very large red stripe on the envelope again. So it's a way to make it more identifiable, moving the ballots through the post office.
Were there any changes to, you're talking about the outside envelope for mailing purposes, and then we have the envelope that contains the ballot. Has there been any changes to the envelope that contains the ballot?
Yes, the Secretary of State did. It's basically just formatting changes to the envelope. I believe all the same information is contained on the envelope, but it's just a slightly different layout.
I was curious about that.
So that in turn should send a message subliminally and visually to the post office to get that mail back to us.
Correct, and it's uniform across the state in Ohio, so we all have similar envelopes that are moving through the post office.
Thank you.
Sure. Just want to note that you do have a copy of an updated organizational chart. We have had a lot of personnel changes in the past few months, so we just wanted you to have that for your reference.
There it is. Thank you. Thank you. Great job, everyone. All right. Anything else? Need a motion to adjourn?
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? This meeting is adjourned for today.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys. Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.